Hello, you've caught me thinking about the emotional impact of video games. That's right, stop the clown music. We're about to get serious.
Okay, not that serious. This is a video about games after all, and games are fun. But I've been having various conversations recently with friends and family who don't play video games who maintain that fun is all video games are, and that by extension they are shallow and mindless and incapable of eliciting any kind of emotional reaction beyond yippee!
And because I'm really bad at debating things in real time, my counter-argument is this video, 3 weeks later.
That's right, my ATB opinion gauge is full to the brim and I'm about to unleash my limit break rebuttal because the idea that games can't deeply affect us emotionally is an old-fashioned nonsense I'm about to bash in the face for 9999 damage. And I'm not just talking about games that make us cry either, because come on, that's not difficult, is it? I cried the other day playing the high road in Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, for goodness sake. No, I'm talking about games that stick in your gut long after you've put down the pad. Games that change your perception, that get inside and shift your core as if someone's tightened the focus ring on the lens through which you see life.
Games that, after playing them, you're just not the same afterwards. Here are 7 of those.
A word of warning before we dive into this list, I'm going to heavily spoil pretty much every game I talk about here, so if I start talking about something and you've not played or finished it yet, just keep that in mind. Okay, here we go. Entry number 1 is What Remains of Edith Finch. I played this just over a year ago and have thought about it pretty much every day since. In fact, I'm going to call it What Remains of Edith Finch is my personal game of the generation so far. It's only 2 hours long, but for me that only heightens the impact, the ingenuity, creativity and raw emotional power of Edith Finch is laser focused into 120 minutes that will punch you in the soul so hard the reverberations will be felt long after.
The quick pitch is you are Edith Finch, a young woman exploring her old family home, a place haunted by the memories of various late family members.
The Finch house is like a family tree in physical form, a twisting hive of history and psychic clutter, a place that seems to blot out time, as though multiple generations of people have been preserved in one single intake of breath that was never expelled. You encounter these people through what they've left behind: books, ornaments, toys, their tragic stories painted with strokes of humour, melancholy and wonder.
The whole family is dead, basically, but it's never a simple case of, oh, that's a bit sad.
Each story gets you in a different way. A baby drowns tragically in a bath. A young girl eats poisoned berries. Lewis, Edith's older brother, fights a long battle against substance abuse and mental illness before finally committing suicide by sticking his head under a guillotine. In isolation, these stories sound horrific and unbearably sad, and yes, they are. But playing through them is an amazing experience that puts you behind the eyes of the person involved. The empathy this generates is startling. You feel the pain, the confusion, the delirium, the sadness of each member of the Finch family, and without wanting to sound overly dramatic, it makes you look at life differently. On one level, it helps you understand that everyone, all the time, is dealing with their own stuff. You know, no matter how insignificant someone else's problems may seem to you, look through their eyes and you'll be faced with what seems like an impassable mountain.
It made me think about the importance of family and how those relationships can very easily just crumble and fall apart if they're not properly nurtured.
On a basic level, it made me think about the fragility of life and how it can be snuffed out in one innocuous moment, tiny mistakes unfolding into calamitous ends. and in the case of Lewis Finch, how the ominous creep of mental illness can claw its way from the periphery into an all-encompassing veil through which truth is barely distinguishable. So yes, Edith Finch is full of sadness, and there's every chance it will make you cry at some point. Different elements will resonate with different people. But underneath the melancholy topsoil are complex layers of emotional sediment waiting to be unearthed.
In other words, play this game for goodness sake.
Entry 2 is Journey. Now, if What Remains of Edith Finch is my favourite game on PS4, then Journey would be my favourite game on PS3, and you can play it on PS4 as well, which is cool. Journey is another game you can finish in 2 or 3 hours.
I am noticing a running theme with the games I like as an adult.
And accomplishes amazing things within that time. The title is the most important aspect for me. There are so many ways to interpret it, many of which may not have even been the intention of the developer, but that's the beauty of art, isn't it? Whatever response a piece of art ignites within you is valid regardless of whether it was intentionally placed there. Journey, then, is many types of journey. It's a physical journey from here to there. It's a visual journey from sun-baked desert and gloomy cavernous depths to frigid mountain peaks and limitless blue skies. It's a musical journey from this to this.
It's an emotional journey from wonder and elation to fear, sadness, and eventual euphoria.
For me, it's something else too. It represents a journey through the mind, a journey with a message of hope at the end. I'm far from unique in my personal battle against mental demons. A huge number of people watching this video will suffer from some form of mental health issue, and the ups and downs that come with living with such issues I see reflected in Journey. You can be having the absolute best time, your mind surfing through the sun alongside velvety dolphin things, when out of nowhere and for no apparent reason, rock bottom. Boom. No transition, no obvious cause. You just run out of gas and, it's all dark now. The music has stopped. What did I do wrong?
Nothing. You did nothing wrong. Keep playing the game.
And so you push on, and it gets scary, and sometimes there'll be someone to play the game with, other times you'll be on your own. You keep the left stick pushed forwards. You reach the outdoors, but now it's cold. The lovely scarf from which you derive all your jumpy glide powers has shriveled and frozen. You're battered by an elemental storm, but you keep walking until it feels like you can't walk anymore, and then it turns out you're not alone and never were. Your scarf grows again. You fill with light and shoot upwards with a force and speed the darkness cannot affect. And hallelujah, the summit is there, bathed in light, and all your lovely red curtain dolphin friends are there as well. So for me, what I took from Journey and have always tried to hold on to since is that there is no depth from which you cannot recover. Just keep playing the game. Entry 3 is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and I can't stress enough the spoilers that are about to come out of my mouth. Just so we're clear, I'm about to tell you what happens at the end of Brothers. Here we go, no turning back. Naya, that is the older brother, dies.
When I said these weren't necessarily games that would make you cry, well, this one almost certainly will.
There's something different about this, however. Character death as a narrative device is overused in all fiction to the point where I've pretty much become desensitized to it. But Naya's death in Brothers hits like a sledgehammer to the gut. Firstly, You are devastated for the younger brother. You know, he's already lost his mum, his dad's very ill, and now his brother's been skewered by a horrible spider lady. That's some heavy baggage to carry, especially for someone so young. But Brothers makes you feel the loss too.
Literally, up until now you've been controlling one brother with the left stick and one brother with the right.
All of a sudden, you're only using one stick. The game doesn't feel right anymore. There's a physical emptiness that matches the one heaving around your insides everywhere between your stomach and throat. And Brothers does an even more brilliant thing. The younger brother reaches a body of water. You know he can't cross without the help of his older sibling, and sure enough, push forward and he fails. But then you use the other stick. The stick that's controlled Naya all this time is now the stick that makes the younger brother push on, overcome his doubts and fears, and conquer the water.
Almost as if his older brother was still with him somehow.
Anyone who's ever lost a person close to them will be familiar with that yawning emptiness, the strangeness, the not quite rightness that seems to swallow everything in the immediate aftermath. Brothers, in the space of minutes, beautifully captures the hopelessness, the strangeness, the denial, and still finds time to deliver a message of hope to players. It's brilliantly handled and one of, if not the most emotionally affecting character deaths I've ever experienced in a game. Right, fourth entry, enough of the tears. It's time to feel some good old-fashioned terror topped with sprinkles of hopelessness and despair.
Well, sign me up.
PT has become something of a legend on PS4, a playable teaser for a game that never was, an enigmatic, beautifully crafted slice of horror that didn't really deal in jump scares, although flippin' heck it certainly has a few. It was more concerned with digging into your skull and lurking there asleep until one day, late at night, you wake up to go to the toilet, walk down your hallway and, oh yeah, I remember PT all of a sudden. Thanks, brain. Now I'm just going to have to hold it until morning because I sure as hell am not going anywhere near that bathroom anytime soon. Say what you want about PT. I think it's a masterpiece in its own right, an infinitely looping corridor filled with supernatural horror and rising tension. As you play, you learn about a man who murdered his family, including his wife Lisa, whose ghostly apparition you'll become intimately familiar with, and presumably Lisa's unborn child, implied by the screaming fetus-like being you'll find in the sink. As you push on, solving obscure puzzles and wondering if and how you'll ever escape, the tension ramps up as if someone's slowly turning a dial. The corridor turns red, a refrigerator leaking blood dangles from the ceiling, a terrifying apparition peers down at you from behind the banisters upstairs.
You slowly realise the horror is not the result of the supernatural, but of an evil much closer to home.
A personal, domestic evil. PT gruesomely conveys the horror of having your own home, something that should be warm and safe, become a place of violence and fear. The dizzying repetition of coming back to the same place every day, not knowing how bad it's going to be this time, having the problem get gradually worse and worse, to have no visible means of escape, to feel trapped and terrified, to dread going through that door, knowing that only pain and fear is on the other side. When this clicked inside me, I felt sick, like I'd ingested something rotten I couldn't eject. PT is brilliantly made, and I still think about it now, 4.5 years on. After playing it, you will not be the same again. Our fifth entry is Rime, another game I'm going to completely spoil. I'm very sorry. On the surface, Rime looks wonderful, colourful and happy. A game about a young boy and his cute little fox friend journeying through a gorgeous landscape and solving nice, gentle puzzles together. It soon becomes apparent all is not as it seems, however. A mysterious hooded figure stalks you as you progress, and the game slowly transitions from autumnal bronze and blue to something altogether darker. A monstrous bird-like creature haunts your every step inside a scorching desert. Rain pours. Rime becomes somber, melancholy, and you're bracing yourself for a grim reveal.
And then it happens. The end game comes. It turns out that your character, and here come the spoilers for those of you who weren't paying attention earlier, your character is dead.
You were killed in a tragic accident out at sea. The fox is your favourite toy. Your character's father finally accepting what's happened and letting go in Rime's final moments absolutely destroyed me. It probably doesn't help playing this if you're a parent. And then you go back, look at the names Rime has given to each chapter, and realise the whole thing has been the dad's journey through grief.
Oh, I've got some dirt in my eyes, I think, or something.
You don't forget Rime once you've finished it. A brilliant, beautiful game. Entry 6 is Final Fantasy VI, a game that taught naive teenage me a very valuable lesson indeed. I came to 6 after having already played Final Fantasies 7, 8 and 9. It was re-released on PS1 and I poured myself into it, amazed by the depth and maturity of the story, the beauty of the soundtrack and the detail of the world.
But I expected this. In fact, the entire game went pretty much as I expected. Until that bit.
The bit when Kefka destroys the world. I thought I was ramping up for the end game at this point. Here I was, swooping in with my party of high-level heroes ready to save the day, and no, failure. The bad guy actually destroys everything. Bits of map you've happily adventured through split in two. The world now unrecognisable, your party scattered. Basically, Final Fantasy VI taught me everything is not always fine. Bad stuff happens. It's how you react to it that's important.
Some of the cast of Final Fantasy VI reacts to it very badly, however.
Okay, Celes, sometimes bad stuff happens and you think the world has ended and all your friends are gone forever, but it's not over. Even if it may seem like it is, even if you're at your lowest ebb, there's still a chance. So up you get. Look at the bird with the bandana, collect your strength, and then slap that weird muscly angel Kefka thing into next week. Well done, Celes, and everyone. Our final entry and final game I'm going to completely spoil this week is Braid, a brilliant puzzle platformer from the mind of Jonathan Blow, the same person behind The Witness, my favourite game to put on if ever I'm feeling a bit too pleased with myself and want to realign with my inner idiot. Anyway, Braid. It's a wonderful game with a very cool rewind time mechanic for solving puzzles, a mechanic responsible for the incredible twist at the end. For the entire game, Tim, that's you, has been attempting to rescue a princess from a horrible monster. During the final moments, everything flips and it's revealed how Tim is in fact the monster and the princess has been running away from you the entire time. This was amazing to me. Video games often echo life in that most of the time we are convinced of the rightness of our own actions. As a video game protagonist, the world pretty much revolves around you. You are the hero, the one, the person who, no matter how questionable your methods, is in the right. The ending of Braid feels like someone's given you a hard slap, ripped out your individual point of view and stuck it inside someone else. The events are the same, but you're seeing someone else's view of those events, someone else's truth. Your actions, which you naturally and unquestioningly thought to be good and righteous, are, through the eyes of others, revealed to be less so.
It's an incredibly rare and powerful thing, isn't it, to realise that you're wrong. You know, we go through our lives instinctively protecting ourselves, deflecting blame and accusations of wrongdoing in any way that we can.
I'm certainly guilty of it, we all are to some degree, and so to have a game shift your perspective like this, to pull the rug and in so doing flip you into someone else's shoes, is pretty amazing. So now if I'm ever in an argument or rewinding time to rescue princesses, there's always something nibbling away at the back of my mind. That something is the ending of Braid. You might be wrong, whispers the nibble.
I mean, I know I'm not, obviously, but the thought that I might be is always there.
And that's our list of 7 games so powerful we were never the same afterwards. Let us know your own examples in the comments. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Hit the notification bell to stay up to date with all our content. And join us again next week for another Friday feature. Thanks for watching.
For the players.